In this episode, we're going back to 1987 and the debut album of an artist that became a polarizing figure in music. Sinead O'Connor is the artist, and The Lion and the Cobra is the album. Stay with us. Welcome, friends, to this episode of the 3324 podcast. Eric, if this was an episode of Friends, this would be called The One with the Sore Throat.
Yeah. Also another morning edition. So
or take two of the morning. So
that's right.
we tried to do this episode yesterday morning. Doesn't make a difference what day it is. We tried to do it yesterday morning, and I was in the middle of a sore throat. So I don't know if I sounded worse. I think I sounded a little better. So we were kind of going through it, and not our fault.
Yeah.
But the services that we got more than halfway through it, or we were pretty much on the way, and it crashed.
Yeah, we lost everything. We
lost everything.
Fine discussion we were having too.
Yeah, so we're gonna replicate it. We're giving you a little bit. This is a little bit about how the sausage is made. But I think I woke up today. My throat feels better, but my voice sounds more hoarse.
You sound a little froggy. Yeah.
Yeah. Got a tiger in the tank. but either way, so what I've got today is I've got some green tea. This is the Mandalorian blend.
There you go. This Grogu.
This is the child green tea. He has his own fields. I don't know what planet these fields are on. I guess he's got a staff that harvests the tea before it's mature. And he makes his own Grogu makes the child green tea.
A little bit of the force in there. A little bit of those medicinal.
This tea is a force to be reckoned with.
I'm sure there's a little bit of
maybe
some midichlorians in there, perhaps.
I could use them. I could use anything at this point.
Get that shit out of your system.
So thank you to Grogu and his entrepreneurial spirit that is making the green tea for me. If you're on YouTube, you just saw it. If you're on YouTube, do us a favor. Go ahead and subscribe. We would appreciate that. If you're listening to us on a mobile device or whatever it is, well, thank you for joining us as well. We appreciate it. We enjoy doing this each and every week. It's always a lot of fun, and it gets more challenging as we get through, and we kind of cut away our favorites and the easy ones that we may have really kind of banged out on our list.
Right.
It becomes, well, what do we want to talk about next? And we go, we start cutting down some levels a little bit deeper. And I think this is one of those.
It's all about the discussion. It's nice to open it up a little bit and, just let some new ideas form and stuff to think about and stuff to chew on. So, yeah.
Yeah. There's more to life than Phil Collins and Jeff Lynne. Not much more. Probably very little more.
Yeah.
But there is a little more. And this is one of them. This is, Sinead O'Connor's debut album. Let's get into the stats, and we'll talk a little bit about the background of it. This was released in November of 1987. She was in the later stages of her pregnancy with her first child during the recording of this album. And she's the same age as us. She was quite young. Let me see. This was recorded 86. So she was like 20, 21.
Yeah.
In that ballpark, going through pregnancy and recording this album. Produced by Sinead O'Connor and Kevin Maloney. All songs written or co-written by Sinead O'Connor. Hit number 36 on the Billboard charts. Not bad for a debut album from a virtually unknown artist with no connections or, not a protege of somebody. Right?
An international artist to boot.
From Ireland.
From Ireland. Yeah.
Irish, the land of U2. I mean, they're like the big guys. This was certified gold, this album, so it sold over 500,000, but less than 1 million. 1 million will get you that platinum award. And it was nominated for a Grammy. It didn't win, but it was nominated for Best Female Rock Vocal.
Yeah.
And I don't know who won that year, but I don't think you can dispute that her voice is something special. And it's really never more apparent than on this album. And this album, really, she just goes through so many different we talk about it a lot with music. We always talk about music. Oh, this album, or Steely Dan has a lot of different textures to it. The music has different textures.
Right.
Her voice, her vocal instrument, her voice has so many different textures to it. Oftentimes in the same song as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I would argue that, I mean, she could have done this album a cappella and it would have been very, very interesting to listen to.
Yeah.
Something that would definitely hook you. Yeah, I often think, I wonder if there was some sort of like rarity out there that has that kind of thing, these tracks that are done just her singing.
Yeah,
Tracks.
it would be nice to put a, you know, we always lament, or you lament more than me about when special editions come out.
I do.
That there's like remixes or like dance remix and stuff, right? I would say, you know what I would want to hear on a remixed album, this would be the perfect, not a remixed album, this would be the perfect special edition for any album.
Yeah.
Any album you could think of is remaster the original, give us what's called a stack of tracks, meaning give us all the tracks without vocals and then give us all the vocals without music.
Yeah.
If you did that for every release, you would have a great package of music to listen to. Because then you could just listen to the vocal stuff and appreciate it. Then you could listen to the, like we like to, the arrangements and what went in or what didn't go in or how sparse are they. I think that should be like the standard for like special editions, and then anything else you want to throw in. But I think that should be like a standard.
I could see that. For the record, I don't like remixes so much, like especially when it's done by other artists that are coming in and kind of doing their own thing, their own spin on it. That's not what the album was intended to be. And maybe the artist enjoys that, like a rapper or somebody will come in and do his own, whatever. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Like you're saying, alternate takes of the song or just the music or just the vocals. Pet Sounds Sessions was a prime example of that. We talked about that before, but
this would be great just to hear her voice isolated. Because I wrote down a bunch of adjectives to describe at least what I get from her voice.
Yeah.
Haunting, vulnerable, soaring, screeching, sometimes shrieking, tender, mature. This is a lot for a 21-year-old.
Wide range of emotion.
And like I said, she often will cut through a lot of these in one song where she'll sing, and she'll do it with a lyric that's repeated. So she'll have a lyric, I think just like you said it would be, she'll sing it, the same one lyric, like in a very tender way, and then she'll sing the same exact lyric right after, but in it with a sarcasm or with a bite to it. And it takes on a totally different tone. And she's doing that, changing those tonalities within the song. And it is more kind of what life is like. These sound like responses. A lot of these songs sounds like responses to things or conversations that already happened that we're not privy to. Right. So the songs don't tell you the whole story. These songs are almost, and for her, she said it was like her therapy, that these were things that working out after the fact. So we don't get all the details, and you don't necessarily, because you're getting the emotion.
Right.
That's contained in the songs, and you can kind of pull from it, where she's at or what she's feeling.
Yeah. And, this is stuff that, traumatic stuff that she'd gone through, like in her very young life up to this point. And you can imagine, I can't imagine.
Not a happy childhood.
The pain that she was going through, and she was only 21 at the time. Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's, and there were a couple other artists that had to deal with that. So I could think of like Tori Amos went through the same thing. Alanis Morissette to a certain extent had that debut, that first serious album where they're dealing with stuff that they just, that is extremely problematic.
And that makes it good. You make a really good contrast. So Alanis Morissette, so her album or that song You Ought to Know is very descriptive of events, right? And that's her way of working through it, or catharsis, right? She's kind of really graphically describing things, right?
Yeah.
Sinead O'Connor is more, okay, that it happened. I don't need to talk, what I need to get out is my thoughts about it afterwards. And not directly address what the things were, which is a very, you bring up a really great point of that's a really interesting contrast to listen to artists that tell you everything and you get the story and you get the emotion from that, or artists that don't tell you everything and they let the emotion or the textures of the song kind of bring it through. And that's what Lion and the Cobra is.
Right. It's a little less personal that way. And you have that knack of writing a song that anybody can pick up and identify with, or if needs be. if a fan will pick up on that type of song, and whereas like you say, like Alanis was talking about a very specific situation and giving her whatever, but if you can sort of twist around that and skirt around the issue but tell that story, and internally that's what that artist was feeling, but it's more universal, it's out there for the fans to digest and just identify with, and that's where you build your fan base, I guess, if you're a great songwriter. So
either way, like because Alanis Morissette, I mean, that album was just gangbusters, so people were ready to hear stuff in that way as well, right? They were ready for that brutal openness, right, from a female artist of if a guy can talk about the things he does, or stuff he's done that isn't necessarily the greatest stuff, or haven't been treated the right way, why can't a woman do it? And she absolutely did it.
And they have that in common, where they kind of got that all out of their system to a certain extent. And then their second album is a little bit more mature. They're exploring new types of music and that kind of thing. Certainly the same is true of all three, Tori and Alanis and Sinead O'Connor. I think we talked about like sort of the idea of them revisiting this stuff like in a concert setting. Would that be like, are those songs stuck with you? Are they the most important songs, or can we embrace new songs, down the road? In the case of, just to not make it an Alanis Morissette episode, but she just toured like on the 25th anniversary of Jagged Little Pill, and performing it in its entirety because it's so iconic. Sinead O'Connor has said, listen, I don't want, I love these songs online in the Cobra. I don't need or want to perform them again, because for her, right, it was therapy for her. So she doesn't want to, in a way, reopen stuff that she's worked on, that she's, been through therapy wounds, for, those. Sure. So for her, it was music, but it was a way of her working out things. For us, we want to go to the concert. We want to go to the concert and hear it. And kind of, if I was going to go see her now, I would hope she would play Lion in the Cobra stuff, but she obviously would not. So that begs the question in the case of Sinead O'Connor, who's just, let's get to we'll circle back on where you're going with that. But I think, because I think we need to talk about, I think we need to talk about this out, like when did you first hear this album, or when did you first encounter her? Because I think we need to give the background on her. And our connection. It was the singles. It was Troy. It was Mandinka. Heard that on the radio. I thought they were very interesting. Her voice was really what got me, because I was already into this kind of exotic type of stuff that was happening in the 80s, where like bands like Talking Heads and Peter Gabriel and not necessarily the sort of stoic prog stuff from the 70s, but they were exploring new territories with their music. And I felt like she was kind of fit that mold, just because her voice was so odd, and when I bought the album, I was pleasantly really surprised by it. It was more, for me, I embraced the art rock of it, because every other song is sort of different. You have those pop hooks in it, but there's also enough for me to really enjoy, like Peter Gabriel. So had just come out a year earlier, so I was really digging on that and his earlier work, and then working with people like Kate Bush and Laurie Anderson and those types of artists of more little sort of art rock avant-garde kind of thing, and I kind of dug that stuff. So she kind of really, I put her in that kind of same category. And
she's got those ethereal textures. On this album, it's got those ethereal textures.
Right.
There's a little bit, not a bunch, but there's a little bit of prog. So, on there, just a little bit. And then there's like you said, there's some pop hooks, which got me. There's some funky, I Want Your Hands on Me is kind of funky and just kind of lends itself. The single, when they released it as a single, they didn't release it as it was on the album. For the official single release, they got the rapper MC Lyte, who was very popular at the time. One of few female rappers, maybe her and Queen Latifah were the only ones of note, to kind of team up, and that became the de facto release of the single, because it fit just so well. That song just already had the funk in it, so it only made sense to bring in MC Lyte to kind of enhance it and kind of put those extra pieces in, you know. So
Yeah.
it's very, very interesting. And I came to it at the same time when the album came out. I was working in Crazy Eddie, which is
Insane.
prices are insane, which is a now way long defunct consumer electronics retailer in the New York, New Jersey, you know, tri-state area of New York, known for their off the wall commercials. And I used to work in the record store, so they would have, you know, sampler cassettes that you'd have to play of different, you know, like, you know, CBS Records would have a sampler of their artist. He'd play that. And this kept coming up, you know.
Yeah.
I think it was Mandinka was coming up, and Jerusalem, I think, were the two cuts that may have been on that. And it really kind of piqued my interest. And then, you know, when I finally looked at the album, you know, it kind of challenged me, because up to that point, you know, female rock vocalists had a certain look, not to be sexist, but it was kind of Stevie Nicks, Ann Wilson, Debbie Harry, like, you know, Linda Ronstadt. That was the look. And here's this young Irish woman with a shaved head making a bold statement, and the record company's like, well, you know, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing that? You know?
Yeah.
And actually, the funny thing is after she got popular, she started to grow her hair back, and she said, people, you know what? I need to shave my head again because people are mistaking me for Enya.
Yeah.
So she goes, like she wanted to grow her hair back, but then she said I couldn't because people thought I was who Enya is just another. She actually makes an appearance on this album, but Enya would have
She does.
as another Irish vocalist who was very popular, and people kept mistaking her for Enya. So she just got pissed off. It's like, well, I was, you know, like, you know, so it became challenging you to look past looks, right? Because it could be very superficial with women in rock and roll. It could be, oh, you know, she's got to be
this
pretty
is
or
the
whatever.
80s too, so you had that sort of glamour.
Yeah, and you had the hair, you had the big hair going on, and all that kind of stuff.
The whole
Yeah,
bit,
so this challenged some of those notions, you know, and I was okay with that. I was like, you know, it didn't make a difference to me because of what was contained in the album. I didn't care what the person looked like at that point, because after listening to the album and hearing her, you know, what she could do, I was blown back. I was like, she's just absolutely incredible.
It's interesting to note that there's two separate covers on this album. There's the international cover with her sort of like, looks like she's actually screaming, you know, but she's actually singing in the picture, like in the photograph. And then of course there's the more subdued US version with her just sort of looking down and being sort of reflective. And
they didn't
like them both. I think
I like the European cover better, actually.
I do too, but
I think that more embodies. I think that embodies the album.
Yeah,
is more. You know, they shot the U.S. cover because they wanted it to be gentler for audiences, right? They want to pander to that and say, oh, you know.
Well, it was shocking to see a bald woman.
Not only a bald woman, but then a bald woman with that look on her face.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, I when I saw that album cover, it wasn't until relatively recently. I'm like, I love that album cover so much better. Yeah. You know, so I'm actually gonna have to go and get get a copy from the UK. No, I'll just get it from Discogs and have them ship me a copy there. So, this was just a really, you know, and at the time in '87, you know, there was just, we were in like quote unquote hysteria, you know, from Def Leppard, Appetite for Destruction, Bad from Michael Jackson, The Joshua Tree, Faith from George Michael, Sign of the Times, all these big artists.
Yeah. Right?
Permanent Vacation, that was Aerosmith's return to like the top. Whitney Houston's second album, Whitney.
Yeah.
There was just so many big artists that came out. And Sinead O'Connor was nothing like any of those. Like that was the thing is you can consider it a rock album, but I'm not sure. Is it closer to world-ish?
I would
music?
Say so.
It doesn't have those flavors. It's got rock to it.
The closest thing would have been Joshua Tree. I mean, you would think it was sort of more akin to what U2 was doing. U2, that was their breakthrough, sort of like mainstream, I think, more. But you know, when you consider their earlier work, their more political stuff and you know that kind of thing, you would think there's sort of a kinship there. But I don't think there was actually. I don't think Bono really thought much of Sinead O'Connor. As a matter of fact, I think he kind of dismissed her as.
I think she did the same as well. I think she kind of had that attitude of, you know.
That's right. Yeah.
Fulcum.
Yeah.
You know, because you know, and it's interesting because you know after this album, came out. And it did okay, right? We said number 36 for a debut album from a virtually unknown artist with, again, it's swimming in the pool of 1987 of what was coming out. Her following album would come out in 1990, which would be titled I Do Not Want What I Haven't Got. And she exploded, right? The song Nothing Compares to You was on that, which is a cover of a Prince song. It went to number 1. The album went to number 1. It went 2 times platinum, and now all of a sudden Sinead O'Connor was everywhere. She was a commodity. But the question becomes, well, let's talk about 2 years later.
Yeah,
she appears on Saturday Night Live in 1992, and she's singing a song, just kind of mainly her, not a lot of backing. And during the rehearsal, she held up a photo. I forget what it was. It was something unrelated. And she, kind of held up a photo just to show to the camera, kind of like an activist type thing. But when she did the live show, she held up a picture of the Pope, and she tore it up and she made a statement, and everybody lost their shit.
Yeah.
Like literally.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember at that time, but the world, it became the world against Sinead O'Connor.
That's right. Yeah.
For someone who, clearly at that point crossed the line from pop star to activist, right? And can you be both? I'm not sure because of the stance she took, and she ended up being right, because she was against sexual abuse in the Catholic Church, and at the time everyone was clutching their pearls of, oh my God, how could you say that? And it turns out she was right, but she was bullied incessantly, even so far as Madonna, who 2 years earlier hypocritically had the song Like a Prayer.
Yeah.
What's in the music video for Life Like a Prayer?
Yeah, there's burning crosses. She's in a wedding dress. She's like crawling around on the floor.
It's all these religious symbols and all these
icons
stuff
that are just, And
right. She has the nerve to then say, well, I think you went a little too far.
That's right.
Is that it? Maybe because then Sinead O'Connor's getting all the attention at that point, and it was off of Madonna, because Madonna had that erotica book or sex book and the CD erotica.
Yeah.
To kind of come in.
She certainly did it coming on the scene as she did. We just talked about the album cover, and maybe people didn't really know at that point what she had gone through necessarily, or even her political views, enough to, but the way she just came out and just did it like that. I mean, that was extremely bold. It was extremely, and we don't know what was going on inside her head. And case in point, the photograph in question was actually a picture of the Pope that was hanging in her mother's house. And that, to me, also there's a little bit of that there too, because we come to find out that, her mom was abusive when she was very young. She died when Sinead was very young. So she was very angry. So that could have been, something about that as well, tearing that picture because it was so personal. But we didn't know that. Nobody knew that. But to do that on national TV, you can understand the repercussions of it, but it was just, but she was right.
Because all people knew from her then was the music video Nothing Compares to You, which is a close-up of her face, kind of soft focus, singing a love song, crying, and it was all over MTV. So everyone thinks, oh, it's just kind of pop, she's, it's quirky, she's bald or whatever. But no, there was something behind all this. There was something that was always brewing in her music, and in line in the Cobra, it's there. Like, I think that's where it is you go back to this album, and the stuff is like those seeds are there. You can hear it in the way she spits lyrics out, and with such contempt sometimes for whatever the situation is, but then sometimes also very tender and very loving and talking about relationships. It's there beforehand. The fact that album wasn't the big one, that her breakthrough was a little bit more, radio friendly or poppier, that all of a sudden people had these preconceived notions.
Preconceived
they
notions of her.
just destroyed her. They absolutely destroyed her, which
I think
had to contribute to a lot of that. She had a lot of mental issues going down the road.
that's right. A lot of Americans thought that, oh, just this angry Irish girl.
Yeah.
And that's all it was. Like, oh, she's from Ireland. There's so much crap going on over there. We don't want to know your politics.
Yeah.
But she was speaking in a much broader way, both personal things and everything. I mean, she would, anything that she could be an activist for, any kind of injustice in the world, she was there. She commented on, or she would jump into that. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And that begs the question from earlier is pop artist or activist? And can you be both? Bob Dylan, kind of, it comes to mind, but Bob Dylan wasn't an activist.
Yeah.
Bob Dylan was a commentator, but Sinead is making commentary as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the 60s, Bob Dylan was kind of commenting on what was going on in the world.
Right.
That's what these people connected to it. She's doing just the same. Why does he get a pass and she didn't? And she just did one thing.
Yeah.
But the world just kind of blew up in her face. Her next albums, she put out an album right after this of jazz covers, which kind of highlighted her vocal prowess that she could handle. That as an artist, she's
most certainly
to be reckoned with.
That's right. She can sort of go right from one thing to another, and she has that ability. But I kind of look at it like I think not that they're alike in any way, but I kind of look at her as sort of the art rock version of Norah Jones, and given the fact that they're both sort of very, very talented in that sense, so they can leap into all different genres and work with a lot of different people too to boot. So yeah, within those genres, whether it's jazz or a little bit of blues or whatever, they both certainly are kind of like savants in that way, and so musically there, so that's great.
So you mentioned Mandinka.
Yeah.
Which was, I think that was probably the first song I heard. And I just, that's got the hook.
Yeah.
It's got the hook. It's got a great soaring vocal from her. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to try and sing it. Even if I wasn't having a sore throat, I wouldn't try and sing it. But just the way her vocals lilt at certain parts, it really kind of when she sings like, I don't know no pain, I feel no shame. It's like, it kind of goes up and down, like the vocal kind of goes like
it's almost like
a roller coaster, and it's
almost like she's chanting, like
it's done so smoothly, and effortlessly that when I heard it, I'm like, oh wow, like that's what kind of grabbed me. I'm like, oh, right. And then like I said, I heard Jerusalem, which is kind of very like a shimmery, guitar-y, kind of like almost like a core. It sounds like stuff you were hearing from like some of those English groups like Sisters of Mercy or The Mission. Like it kind of had some roots in that. Mm-hmm. And do you think, since it came out in 87 and we talked about some of these albums, there was a certain sound in the 80s. I think it comes close to skirting that line.
Of course.
It's held back just enough, but because her vocals, she's such a good vocalist that she could battle with the production. I mean, she can hold her own against the production, because some of these songs are really, really well, like there's a lot going on in it, and then some are very sparse.
That's right.
But the stuff that's thicker and more well produced, I think she also can hold her own against. She doesn't get lost in the sauce.
I do, and as much as I love Mandinka by itself as a single, I think I like it even more when it's introduced by the first track, which is Jackie.
Yeah.
And what gets me about that song is the fact that it chugs along and it keeps building and it's building and it's building. And you think at some point that it's going to explode into this like very polished produced type of thing where all the drums kick in and it's just going to explode, but it never goes there. It just keeps it steady of that constant build. And then you have that pop hook kick of Mandinka, right after it. So it's kind of like that 1-2 punch, perfect blending of two very, very different sounding songs, but they just work so well. It's almost as Jackie is almost like the introduction to Mandinka.
Yeah. It's like a prologue to the whole album. It's short.
Great. Yeah.
It's short. It's atmospheric.
Yeah.
It kind of gives you an indication of what she can do, but if you only listen to that song, you think, oh, okay, this is going to be like this kind of stuff, you know, like
Right.
And you're
Exactly.
right, and then Mandinka just kicks. It just kind of kicks right in, and you get into something really kind of up tempo, poppy, and she's handling that great. And again, with her particular vocal spin, you know, it's like that Celtic way of singing where the vocals really go up high, and
Yeah.
you know, I was listening to certain tracks on this, and her voice just sounded like no vibrato. She's holding notes, and they're not wavering. Like they're held strong and true. And I'm like, geez, like what? Like usually there's going to be some at the end. Even the strongest vocalists, you know, kind of start to give up the ghost at the end.
And I love vibrato. I mean, if you can do that and do it well, I dig that really. But yeah, you're right. That just that pure single note.
Yeah, it's strong. It's straight. It's clear. It's just so
Piercing.
like yeah, exactly,
piercing.
exactly.
Pierces, yeah. And it, you know, some people might not like that, but given the fact that we talked about singers who are using their voice as an instrument, very much so, and just sort of playing with that and being able to push yourself in that way and make it so interesting to listen to. To me, it's not a sound that it's like nails on a chalkboard. You know, like some people might think so. But no, I find it to be fascinating that a human voice can do that. You know, it's just amazing.
Yeah. And like I said, I love that each song has multiple textures to it. So it's not just, even Mandinka isn't just a pop song. It's got so many different things to it. Or just like you said it would be. It's just kind of it's a slow, down-tempo song, and she's kind of singing it tenderly. But then at the end, she changes. It became more of an assault or an attack on her partner. You know, by the time her vocals get to the end, the song is taken on a different tone and tenor. And I just like, that's what I love listening to this album is, you know, you get used to hearing artists and they sing, you know, they'll sing and they pretty much sound the same. Or they'll sing one song and maybe a little bit higher, a little falsetto. But, you know, at that point in 88, when I got to it, I wasn't used to hearing that type of diversity within a song.
Yeah.
From a vocalist. I'm used to hearing it in music where it's changing, and especially in proggy stuff, it's, you know, different movements and suites or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But not really hearing a vocalist really from one line to the next sing the same thing, and it takes on a totally different meaning.
In a song that's less than 4 minutes long. Yeah. Like you get so much in such a short amount of time. Yeah, that is amazing.
Yeah, she had a clear
going too. It's not just one song. It's every song. It's, you know, she can do this and just keep that up and just find new territory to explore.
Yeah, and you mentioned Troy is one of your favorites. That's to me that's the like at the end it gets really proggy. It's like the
of course, and it's also the longest track on the album. You know,
it's like this epic thing, and you know she's calling into some biblical imagery. I mean that's where the title, the lion and the cobra comes in. You know, and talking about Troy and burning it down. Like she really kind of has a grasp for the metaphors that she wants to use. You know, and again, for someone that young, to have that insight and to be able to really kind of put it in, and you can't help but stop and listen to it. You know,
you often wonder
even
too,
the poppier stuff.
You often wonder too, is this a lot of the stuff that she a lot of like sort of religious passages, and you wonder if that was like really kind of instilled in her by her like her mom or something. Was she like that kind of, did it go there where she was like very stern and strict and, like very religious or something? And, to grow up in that vein is just,
She struggled. She throughout her career has struggled with the nature of religion. She's become Buddhist or Muslim. Her last album, I think, was in.
She's exploring all faiths. She's trying to explore, expand the mind a little bit. But
what does that mean? And what does that mean, right? And what does religion mean? And her last album, I think, was 2015 or 2016, and the lead single was called "Take Me to Church."
Yeah,
but she didn't mean a Catholic church necessarily, but church in the in the notion of what does a church mean to someone.
part of the journey.
A place of respite, or a place to kind of get away, or a place of
inter-
solitude.
I
So
always looked
she's
upon
challenging
that,
those
yeah.
things.
I always looked upon that as a personal thing in any way. And, it's just to me, it's just a building. If you go to church, whatever, but you're exploring different faiths, you're exploring new territory. You're trying to understand something bigger but also keeping it personal. And I think that she went through a lot, and she changed her name quite a few times. When I think she was
changed it twice.
She was like
she changed it
name,
to
and then she
first one was Magda Davitt.
Yep.
But now she's known as Shuhada Sadakat.
Yeah.
But her album, she puts out her albums as Sinead O'Connor.
O'Connor. Yeah.
And she's not like, oh, don't ever call me that. It's I think these are just kind of like iterations of her.
That's right.
Right. Of just like when Prince changed his name to whatever the symbol was, right? It wasn't like, don't ever call him Prince. It's just that he's evolving into whatever he's evolving into in person.
Or Cat Stevens with was it
Yusef.
Yeah,
which is So this was the same thing as she just going through all these different phases, and some of it has to do with some of the mental illness stuff that she's gone through. She's she lost a son to drug addiction, and he was quite young. It was like 13 or 15 or something like that. So she's had her share, and again it kind of comes down, I think, to getting popular, right? You get her second album, which was a monster thing. Everyone's falling for her. Then all of a sudden everybody hates her.
Yeah.
How do you deal? They say it's hard enough to deal with fame.
Fame. That's right.
The sudden rush of fame and having access to everything. How do you deal with everybody adoring you, and then the next day everyone is like, you're the worst thing ever?
Mm-hmm. I can't imagine.
As what was that? That was 1992.
That's right.
So what? 24, 26.
It's very easy to get caught up in that too. Very easy to turn around and be so judgmental and be like, oh, I can't, no, you know what I mean? Like that's where the whole idea of separating art from the artist comes in. But in this case, because her music is so integrated with her beliefs, and like you say, the activist aspect of it is just, you really can't separate.
Yeah. I think it inspired her to double or triple down on it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. She said, okay, you're gonna make me a pariah. You're gonna make me an outsider. Yeah. I'm gonna tell. Then I am now free to tell it like it is and to say what I want. Because and there's some freedom in that, right? That she's no longer constrained or shackled by being a pop star and what they expect. She, and who knows? I don't think she knew what was going to happen when she did it, but it was kind of like a scorched earth policy. She just everything was kind of left to ruin. So what's left after that is do whatever you want. Yeah. Right. Because there's no expectations, and so that's why she was able to even just go further and just kind of do whatever. Yeah. So she wanted to do a jazz album. You do a jazz album. You do whatever. Mm-hmm. You want to do something that's more introspective. You want to pursue religious endeavors and see what that means to your life, and make music based on that. Yep. She's just had an eclectic career ever since. So getting back to what you said in the beginning, which kind of catches up to her now, is that she won't play any songs from Lion in the Cobra live, right? She said it was my therapy. Why, that's like me going back and revisit, someone going back and revisiting a therapist when you've already had the therapy. You don't need to talk to them again about it, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Theoretically. And that was what this album was for her. So if you're a fan, right, mm-hmm. and you're going to go see, you probably are aware of this. So you're probably like, okay, I'm going to listen to some newer stuff, or I have no clue. Right, like mm-hmm. kind of like going to a Dead show. You don't know. You're not going to get Casey Jones, Uncle John's Band, and Truckin' and Touch of Grey in one show. If you get one, you're lucky, right?
That's right.
It's like whatever.
No two shows are alike. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a roll of the dice, and the dice have 40 sides each. You don't know what
you're the same way. Yeah. Yep.
So, if you were going to bring somebody, would you forewarn them? And that being said, does the artist owe us anything? Are we owed? Nothing compares to you. Are we owed? Do I deserve, or am I owed to hear Mandinka live because I love that album? Do artists owe it to me, or do they just say, is it whatever?
That's a tough question, but it's a good one. Yeah, I don't know. It depends on the fan, what kind of fan you are, I guess, or it depends on the artist. And if you are that kind of fan that truly understands that you like to get climb inside their head a little bit, and as you grow or get older, if you were to ask me this question at the age of 15, I would have been like, oh yeah, hell yeah, they always, we want those songs. But no, you as you get older, you understand they're human beings too. I mean, they progress, they learn, they live. So as a fan, you would come to expect that. But but like you say, if you're going to bring somebody, yeah, I would most definitely forewarn them and say,
Get ready.
Get ready. You might not hear what you want to hear.
Yeah,
and I'm always, I've always been a proponent of artists kind of stretching those boundaries anyway. Yeah. Even if they are doing those songs, I don't mind them changing the arrangements, because I kind of love it. I want something a little bit more from a live setting, but
I think it's nice to know ahead of time, though.
Yeah.
Case in point, we don't mention it often, but we went to go see Bob Dylan.
Yeah,
and we were expecting. I was certainly expecting.
Sure. Yeah.
So I was expecting something,
mm-hmm.
but Bob Dylan, the artist, decides what we get. Right. As he's a legacy artist, but he's not on the greatest hits tour, mm-hmm. like someone like McCartney is, or Journey, or whoever. He still tours because he wants to, and he does things that he wants to do because it tickles his fancy at that time.
Yeah.
And we went and we're kind of, to put it apropos to what he did, we were bewitched, bothered and bewildered, because we didn't know he was doing all standards. We didn't realize that was going to make up the lion's share, and people that were walking out were pissed. They were justifiably, the anger was palpable that people paid all this money to go see an icon, and they didn't get blown in the wind. They didn't get tangled up in blue.
Right.
They didn't get the hurricane. They didn't get any of that. They got a bunch of standards, and this guy that was detached from the audience, but that was the artist's art.
Yeah.
Right. That was the artist. That's the way I look at it now. This was the artist making art.
The funny thing was that we before the show started, we were standing there, and these people were actually having a conversation about, I've seen Dylan like countless number of times, and this, and you would think that they would know this about him. It was so surprising to me that this guy, one of these guys, was just so mad, like he was just stormed out of there in a rage.
They were,
and I'm like, really? I mean, come on. I mean,
we were scratching our heads. We didn't know, so
we didn't know. We loved it. We thought it was. That's okay. This is Dylan. I guess this is what he's about.
So I think that kind of opened my eyes too to understanding that. So if I went to go see Sinead O'Connor,
mm-hmm.
Expect the unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Expect to not know what's going to happen, and just go with an open mind.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's what this first album challenged me to do from the beginning.
Yeah.
Is open my mind about my notions about female singers and about rock music. And again, I was very, in 87, very much into the rock and roll stuff. And,
mm-hmm.
the Cult came out in 87, Electric. So I was on a trajectory, and this album comes out, which is totally different and makes a different statement, and really demands that you listen to it.
Yeah.
That she's got something to say. It wasn't just a collection of pop songs that this Irish girl wrote. It's a mature woman about to have a child as well.
Mm-hmm.
She was married to the drummer John Reynolds, making this powerful statement, which I can't overstate or understate the power of this album.
Mm-hmm.
when you put it on, you got to give it a listen. You can't be vacuuming.
No.
While you're doing this, you can't be doing really. You can't be like balancing your checkbook or play solitaire. You kind of have to really, I highly suggest if you're listening on Spotify, the lyrics are there. Follow the lyrics along too, because you really kind of take a trip with her through what she's going through.
I'm often very critical of the 80s, as a whole, like looking back and saying,
mm-hmm.
I prefer the 70s and the glorious music that came out and during that decade, and such diverse amount of it. And I always
are you like that woman in Field of Dreams? Like, no, you had two 50s and skipped to the 70s. I was there for the 60s. No, you had two 50s and skipped to the 70s.
But it's certainly albums like this that make you take stock and say, you know what, the 80s did have something to offer.
Yeah.
And this was exactly this kind of music
Yeah.
that I prefer, like out of the 80s, like, Paul Simon's Graceland, Peter Gabriel's stuff, and even U2 to a certain extent. And, all these different bands that were doing this sort of world, giving us something more of a different culture or something that I just found maybe didn't appreciate at the time, kind of just rolled right by, but it just, but it was so different that it was interesting. So yeah, this is some of the finer points of the 80s for me. I think the thing that I always speak, I think, is the biggest, unfortunately, like the rock music of the 80s. Probably what I'm talking about is a lot of the leftover bands from the 70s coming over and not trying anything new, not necessarily. They're trying to do what they did, but with a more polished sound, and it never really worked for me. So that's probably what I'm referring to.
And ironically enough, there is a band that I latched onto in the 90s that I felt was the spiritual, if not the vocal successor to Sinead O'Connor. Do you know who I'm talking about? Have any idea? Also from Ireland. So that's a hint.
Maybe
kind
Cranberries? Cranberries, yeah.
Dolores O'Riordan. When I heard Linger and Zombie and Dreams, I heard echoes of Sinead O'Connor's vocal style.
Yeah.
It's there. So it's got to be something in, from that country of, what they bring, with their, accent or whatever, or what music they were exposed to as a child, maybe something more traditional types of music, and then transplant it into rock. Because when I listen to the Cranberries, I get it's like the echoes of what Sinead O'Connor might have done.
That's right.
Had she stayed on, especially like Zombie. That to me, Zombie is like a tribute song to Sinead O'Connor.
Yeah.
And it's got the same.
It's a great song, for sure. But
it's got the same message. It's got the vocal style is very much the same.
But it could also be one of the most grating songs.
Oh, I love it. Oh.
I do too. Yeah. But I'm thinking of The Office. I'm thinking of like Ed Helms when he's singing it, like and Jim, and like Krasinski's just
don't ruin anything.
But it can have that effect if you're not if you don't like that kind of voice and those inflections and But there's also Clannad, and Enya, who does appear on this debut album. But I like that stuff too. I like that sort of soft, ethereal.
Yeah, Enya's more the traditional.
Atmospheric Gaelic, kind of sound. I love that exotic stuff that you just sit back and really absorb it and take it in. So
that's just music for sitting down and listening to.
That's right. Yeah.
Cool. Well, as we wind down, we did talk about a lot, probably most of our favorite songs. For me, it's always gonna be the up-tempo Mandinka, Jerusalem. I Want Your Hands on Me. Even the one with MC Light, I actually had the remix of that and had I had the cassette single of that, so I was digging that as well. Either one. That song was actually in Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah. It's effective. It's
Nightmare on Elm Street 4, was it? I think, or the Dream Master. So that she actually got got some more exposure from there. Just Call Me Joe, the very end song, very heavy, like overdriven guitar. It's just an overdriven guitar for the most part, and her with a very tender vocal. Again, just matching up these different things. An overdriven heavy guitar just playing, individual notes of a chord, and then her singing
and her holding her own.
These interesting pairings of her voice with different types of arrangements. Now, what about you? What piqued your interest before we send everybody on their way?
Songs, you mean? Like what are my favorite? Like the first two.
Yeah,
like I said,
Jackie and Mandinka.
That 1-2 punch right there is what really gets me going for this album. And then just the rest of it is just great. I think it's a perfect album. I don't think there's a bad song on it. Lay Your Hands on Me, I think is, it might be a little naive, but it does its job. I kind of like that.
It gets to the point. The lyrics are to the point. It's there's no beating around the bush. So it's a good, I just really enjoy listening to it because again, it harkens back to kind of, around this time, I think I got into Midnight Oil as well, which is like another political band and I loved it, like Diesel and Dust, so I was
under.
I was kind of getting all these different, all these new experiences were kind of coming in around this era, where I was kind of really starting to open up a little bit. So, and this is just one. You got to check this out. If you never listened to it, forget about, Nothing Compares to You. Like, I'm going to say forget it.
I know.
Go to this out. Go to this album. This has got the fire. It's got the spirit.
And this is an album that you and I can totally identify because we're so different in terms of, it's the perfect album for the two of us because you're leaning more towards the pop rock side of it. I love the more atmospheric stuff. So you can put the two together and
there you go.
Perfect marriage right there.
Two great tastes that taste great together.
Hand in hand. There you go.
You got your pop in my prog. You got your prog in my pop.
Absolutely. Yep.
So there it is. That's going to do it for this episode of the 3324 podcast. I made it through.
You did. And actually your voice improved.
I'm going to make a rhyme. I made it through thanks to Grogu.
There you go.
Grogu's green tea.
Now, I wanted to ask, is he known as just the child on there or Grogu?
Yeah, because this came out before
his name was revealed.
Before he was named. So he's the child of green tea.
Yes.
The child of green tea. So thank you, Grogu, for getting me through this episode. You can find us on social media on Facebook and Instagram at 3324 Podcast. So go there. A lot of fun. We give you daily doses of interesting fun, trivia, birthdays, celebrating films as well. I think it'll look nice in your feed when you're scrolling to see the stuff that we post. If you're not into the whole social media thing, then visit us on YouTube. You can see the video versions of this. And you can also see our archive of live shows, which we do every other week when the schedule is right, but we are pretty consistent with that as well. So that's going to do it for the Lion and Cobra. Definitely check this out. It's on all the streaming services, so it's a highly recommend from 1987. So for Eric, this has been Dean, and we will catch you on the flip side.